Deputy President read out the manifesto of his government, which was titled The Plan. Tonight on the broadcast, we assess the performance of the Kenya Kwanza government in the last 1 year. We speak one-on-one with President Ruto's defender in Parliament. He is Kiharu Member of Parliament and is also the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee in the National Assembly, the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro. And speaking of him, he is right here in studio. But before even the news, I want to begin this conversation, the broadcast tonight, with a question to Mheshimiwa, who is already right here in studio. Mheshimiwa, thank you so much for joining us on TV47.
Thank you very much, George.
It is your first time here, right?
It's my first time in these studios, but not definitely on TV47.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. I want to begin, before we have the highlights, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the performance of the Kenya Kwanza government, very briefly, in the last 1 year?
I would, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'll give it 8.5.
8.5.
Which is still an A.
It's still an A.
And the 1.5 is...
That's quite generous.
It's not quite generous. It is actually realistic because I've been in the kitchen myself and I know how it was. I know the kind of effort the president and all of us have put into the works.
Yes.
And actually that is a conservative estimate. And the 1.5 is basically because we underestimated where we were, and I'm very grateful that we are where we are now as a country.
And 8.5 is his score, and he says he's been in the kitchen. Has the government served you the right menu? You can tell us on our social media platforms at TV47 News, at George Maringa _. You can also tweet him directly at Ndindi Nyoro. A lot is coming up right here on TV47, the home of untold stories. But before then, here are the top stories. Tonight, the Nairobi City County government has introduced a comprehensive strategy to mitigate the impacts of the impending El Nino phenomenon.
We're going to identify those which present a clear flooding threat, and we will do what needs to be done to protect Nairobians objectively, without fear, without favor, and without victimization.
Within its healthcare manifesto, the Kenya Kwanza government pledged to bolster the healthcare workforce, allocate 15% of the budget to healthcare, and initiate the Universal Health Coverage Program. What progress has been accomplished in fulfilling these crucial commitments? Plus, he has been termed by many as one of those in President William Ruto's inner circle and shoots straight from the hip when defending the government's agenda in Parliament. Tonight, we engage National Assembly's chair of the Budget and Appropriations Committee, Kiharu Member of Parliament Ndindi Nyoro.
Honorable Speaker, we have to support the revenue side of the budget because, Honorable Speaker, that is where we draw the resources to be able to take that you are undertaking.
Absolutely. You can stand by for that conversation with the Honorable Ndindi Nyoro a little bit later on in this broadcast. We thank you for joining us. The Nairobi County government on Monday unveiled a plan to deal with the effects of El Nino after weather forecast reports pointed towards El Nino rains for 3 months starting October. The Meteorological Department says Nairobi, Kiambu, Mombasa and Nakuru are some of the counties expected to experience heavy rainfall. Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja on Monday said the county has employed 3,000 youth to work on the county's drainage systems so as to prevent adverse effects of El Nino. Mike Kagwongo opens our broadcast tonight with that report.
Various counties are putting measures in place to prevent adverse effects of El Nino rains in case they are experienced in the country in the coming months. In Nairobi, residents who stay in areas most likely to experience heavy rainfall will have to vacate to prevent possible loss of lives and property.
We're going to identify those which present a clear flooding threat, and we will do what needs to be done to protect Nairobians objectively, without fear, without favor, and without victimization.
According to Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja, measures have been put in place to resettle people on a need-be basis.
The County Assembly is currently working on the finance bill. Part of it is the fines. If the place in front of where you're working is dirty, you have to take care of the place where you're working. Haizi kuwa unauza miwa, unaichonga chonga tu hapo inamwagika, na unacheka, unauliza mbona Sakaja hajasafisha hapo.
He said over 3,000 youth have been contracted by the county for disaster management in all the 17 constituencies of Nairobi. They will start by opening drainage systems in anticipation of El Nino.
If you see mtu wa transport, watu wa matatu wanafanya kitu mbaya, you as an employee of Nairobi have the right. It is called collective responsibility. Whole of government approach.
Cabinet Secretary for Lands and Housing Zachary Njero on his part said the national government will collaborate with counties in putting up mitigation measures. His East African Community, Arid and Semi-Arid Lands and Regional Development counterpart Rebecca Miano last week lamented that the government will require approximately 33 billion shillings to mitigate floods in the country.
We'll be collaborating with governments to map encroachment on drains and sewers, as well as identify vulnerable buildings in riparian land and wetlands.
El Nino is normally associated with going up of the level of heat in the ocean, especially Pacific Ocean, which leads to change of environmental conditions in most countries in the world. Mike Kagwango, TV47, Nairobi.
To a story that has made headlines recently, and Interior Cabinet Secretary Kithure Kindiki has issued a set of directives mandating that all national government administration offices prominently display service charters outlining the services they offer. These service charters must contain comprehensive information regarding the cost of accessing services, the expected the associated fees must be transparently outlined and payable through electronic means. The CS also issued a stern warning to any officers found soliciting bribes from citizens, asserting that they would not only face administrative consequences but also be subject to legal prosecution.
We have decided to implement the government policy on zero tolerance on corruption. Therefore, no is supposed to demand bribes from members of the public to offer services that are supposed to be offered free of charge. Hakuna ofisa wote wa umma ako na ruhusa kuitisha ongo ili apatiane huduma ambaye inatakikana kupatianwa bure. There will be no payment of government fees in cash again. All payments must be done electronically so that to ensure that we do not have a corrupt environment. We will not tolerate corruption, and we mean business. We mean business. You want to try our resolve, try asking for a bribe. We'll get hold of you. We will make sure that you become an example to the rest of the people of your kind. Kwa hivyo tungetaka nchi nzuri, nchi yenye heshima. Ukiingia kwa chief unaongeleshwa vizuri. Ukienda kwa county commissioner unaongeleshwa kwa heshima. Wakora wote na wezi wote wafanye vile kulisemekana. Ni mangapi? Ni mangapi?
Indeed, a stern warning from the CS. A section of governors drawn from the Lake Region Economic Bloc governors, led by Kisumu Governor, have reiterated on their stance to continue supporting Azimio leader Raila Odinga amid claims of Azimio's political nemesis Kenya Kwanza moves to influence support from Odinga-allied elected leaders. The statement by Anyang' Nyong'o, while flanked by Kisii Governor Simba Arati, Gladys Wanga of Homa Bay and Ochilo Ayako of Busia, followed a meeting chaired by Odinga held on Monday in the Lake Town city of Kisumu. The commitment from the ODM elected governors comes barely after ODM party leader cracked his whip on leaders labeled as rebels in the party for supporting the William Ruto ruling coalition, Kenya Kwanza.
But we know for certain that we are in Azimio, and we have the vision bearer, who has always been the father of change and progress in the nation. And there's no other party, no other coalition that can do it better than Azimio. So no wind can blow us apart. No earthquake can shake our foundation. And therefore, rest assured that though that be the case, it does not disturb us at all. And secondly, we did definitely talk about a lot of economic issues, transportation on the lake, how we can link our ports and beaches, like used to happen the East African Community Days, what investments are needed, investment in agriculture, particular research, and the access to capital. And I think those are pertinent issues that will perhaps come out in a communique eventually as a report of this meeting.
Now, residents of Majiri and Kabuko villages in Gesha, Limuru constituency have lamented being in a blackout for the last 3 weeks, with insecurity in the area drastically rising. The young and old took to the streets expressing their dissatisfaction and calling on Kenya Power and Lighting Company, KPLC, to upgrade transformers that were installed more than 40 years ago. The area MCA reiterated that his office has written to relevant authorities for installation of more transformers.
Because there has been power outage since Monday last week, and I did write a letter to Kenya Power indicating the same. And because of the high level, the population, we are requesting Kenya Power to add an extra generator so that we can be able to accommodate the increasing population.
Tumekaa more than 3 months bila stima, ikiwa on and off, transformer inaibiwa, and we are suffering. We have business people who have salons, we have kinyozis, cyber cafes, and people in their homes as well, and students who are learning. So there is no proceeding that is happening because we don't have electricity. What we are requesting for from our nation is just electricity and electricity.
Kama saluni nyingi hapa imefungwa, watu baba wamefunga, cyber imefungwa. Hawa watoto yetu watakula nini? Watakula nini? Si hapa insecurity it is not here. We don't, kwa sababu watoto wengi wameenda nyumbani, wale wanafanya hiyo kazi hiyo wanafanya. Supermarket hakuna kitu inawekwa, ni duka nyingi sana imefungwa.
Like now most of the businesses are closing very very early because of insecurity.
Mkifanya contract na Kenya Power, ile kitu inafanyika ni kwamba kama wewe ukitumia stima yao unafaa kuwalipa. Nao wasipokupatia hiyo stima wanafaa kulipa sababu ulikuwa umejipanga vile. Kwa hivyo kutoka hapa utatupata sisi kama wasimamizi, tutaenda kotini ndio hawa watu warudishiwe hasara ambayo wameendelea nayo.
Now, amidst the worldwide struggle against the detrimental consequences of climate change, it is undeniable that individuals coping with HIV/AIDS have not been exempt from this global crisis. This is particularly true for those residing in regions plagued by flooding or drought, as they have been compelled to relocate to different areas, impeding their ability to consistently adhere to antiretroviral treatments, that is ARVs. Elizabeth Atieno brings us a report on that.
Drought, hunger, migration, floods, houses, schools, and more so hospitals submerged are devastating events that tell a story of the adverse impacts of climate change. The health challenges arising from climate change and the HIV/AIDS pandemic are unprecedented, a situation likely to become worse if the anticipated 50-year drought period comes to fruition. The extreme change in weather patterns brought about by climate change have led to drought and floods, a situation that has left the vulnerable population, including those living with HIV and AIDS, to migrate to safer grounds, which in turn affects their adherence to the ARV drugs. In Don Bosco village, Marsabit County, we meet Kabale Arero, who has been living with HIV for over 18 years. Her area of jurisdiction has been one of the worst hit by drought and hunger. She tells us how the situation has affected her treatment journey. For instance, she is forced to travel all the way to Isiolo County to get the ARV drugs.
Watu 1,120 wanaenda Isiolo na zaidi mbele kupata madawa zao, kwa sababu wengi wanaogopa hata visit hapa. Na mimi katika hesabu yangu Wale watu nimeweza kuokoa ni zaidi ya watu 4,000.
If you're disrupted and you move away from home, so you're not able to access your regular clinic where you pick up your medication, isn't it? Sometimes when there's flooding, the facility is cut off.
Give you some history. Between 2013 and 2022, the number of individuals receiving lifelong antiretroviral treatment has doubled.
Climate change has led to food insecurity or hunger, thereby undermining response to ARV drugs. For example, those living with HIV are at higher risk since AIDS intensifies hunger and malnutrition. Malnutrition and risky infant feeding practices among food insecure mothers also elevates the risk of mother-to-child transmission.
Hii dawa ya ARV inataka chakula. Bila chakula ARV haina maana.
Malnutrition is probably the commonest cause of immunosuppression. If you don't eat enough, your immunity is down. For a person living with HIV, especially who is on treatment, yes, the treatment is great. It improves your immunity build-up, but you also need to pay attention to what you're eating so that you sustain good health.
Pathways linking climate change with HIV and AIDS indicate that human migration impacted by severe drought as witnessed in the country recently leads to human migration, resulting in the enlargement and extension of new sexual networks, which also creates conditions conducive to substance abuse.
When people are displaced, they're living in end up in more crowded environments. It creates a perfect environment for transmission of respiratory disease, and tuberculosis is actually a big deal.
It is with no doubt that the impacts of climate change have greatly impacted the gains made in the fight against HIV and AIDS, which has been in existence since the year 1984. Statistics from NSDCC state that 1.4 million people are currently living with HIV in the country, and 18,473 have since succumbed to the virus. The adolescent and young people aged 15 to 34 account for 75% of all new infections.
Have moved from HIV prevalence. As an indicator on its own, is not a good one to look at that response, but we have moved from 6.8% to 3.7%.
Related fatalities have witnessed a substantial decline by 68%. And this, therefore, we now have a number of about 58,446 that we had earlier. It has come down to 18,473 to be specific.
When we talk about the link between climate change and health, there is no way we can shy away from the dire need of resources in terms of funding to cushion nations, especially from the African continent. The finances set aside by international bodies and donors to aid the fight against HIV and AIDS has proven to be a key catalyst fastening the rate of reduction in HIV prevalence in the country. However, there are concerns after the Ministry of Health recently revealed that the country is expected to transition out of most, if not all, donor support by 2030.
In fact, it was by 2027. They will be packing and they will be going away. We requested them to stay until 2030.
Currently, Kenya is utilizing 50 billion Kenya shillings from Global Fund to help fight HIV, malaria and TB.
Msaada ile ninapata kutoka kwa serikali na kutoka county government inategea watu 100 tu.
Has supported many achievements, including more than 110 million tests performed since 2004. VMMC for over 2.5 million men since 2010. We currently care for about a little over 600,000 orphans and vulnerable children. And of course, as mentioned before, 1.3 million people on treatment.
We have boosted the domestic funding for the pool HIV by about 33%. And we are yet to increase this to up to 50%. That is our target.
For now, persons living with HIV and AIDS have been urged to ensure they never run out of ARV stock and also engage in environmental friendly practices like planting of trees to avert effects of climate change. Elizabeth Atino, TV 47.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that. To some business news, and the trade imbalance on export cargo between Kenya and China stands at 1:16, a factor that is holding back Kenyan exporters from fully exploring the lucrative market. The Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry President Dr. Eric Ruto says the chamber will be setting up corresponding customs offices to ascertain the quality of goods before exportation, as a majority of Kenyan products do not meet the Asian countries' standards.
Kenya's total exports to China grew by 7% from 2021 to 2022. This brought the total exports to China to $240 million, whereas the imports stood at $3.8 billion.
We are taking seriously to be able to bridge that gap.
The export shall majorly be physical with the foreign exhibitors and the trade delegations visiting the country.
This now brings the total volume ratio of trade between the two countries 1:16, the imbalance ballooning the cost of logistics between the two countries.
And I'm imagining if it is goods, for every 1 container that leaves Kenya, 16 leaves China. That's a risk both for Kenya and for China. What does it mean? It means that any container that comes from China to here goes back to China empty.
The Kenyan National Chamber of Commerce and Industry now says a number of measures have been put in place to remedy the imbalance, including corresponding standard offices and intelligence-based business research for business-to-business connections.
For us, we look at this opportunity to have an up-close engagement with our investors to show them how important it is for them to consider Kenya as a manufacturing hub and as a gateway to the continent.
Value addition still remains a major challenge for a majority of businesses looking to exportation. With a 1:16 ratio, the Kenya-China trade is not doing as well as it had been anticipated. Now, the president of the Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry is saying that there are ways that they're going to take in order to make sure that these numbers are improved going forward. Hibak Said for TV47 Nairobi.
Thank you, Hibak, for that report on business. Time now for sports news. And Olympic boxing qualifiers hit squad captain Boniface Mogunde knocked out 2016 Rio Olympics bronze medalist Mohamed Rabi of Morocco in the light middleweight bout of the Olympic boxing qualifiers in Dakar, Senegal. The victory saw Mogunde setting up a second round bout with Lesotho's Arina Pakela, where the winner will sail through to the quarterfinals. David Karanja also knocked out the bout Justin of Central African Republic in the first round of the flyweight contest to qualify into the second round, where he will face off with Jones Trofimas from Namibia later on tonight. Meanwhile, Christine Ongare lost her bout against Tunisia's Hafsi Wafa, while Amina Mata also lost her fight to Sierra Leone's Sarah Jo in the women's 54-kilogram fight.
Kwanza kabisa nashukuru Mwenyezi Mungu kunifikisha umbali. Yenyewe bila yeye singeweza. Pili, nimecheza vizuri, nimeingia kwa ring, sikuwa na tension, sikuwa na wasiwasi. Nilijua nimetrain poa, sikuwa na wasiwasi, nimejicompose vizuri. Kufika kwa ring pia makochi pia wakasoma opponent, wakanielezea venye nitafanya. Wamenisaidia sana, seconders wamenisaidia sana. Nilikuwa nawasikiza sana na nafanya chenye wanataka. Mwenyewe kanisaidia, weekend opponent wangu alikuwa weak sana kwa body. Sasa hapo ndo alikuwa ananiambia tu ni concentrate na hapo. Mwenyewe niliwasikiza, nikakuwa poa, nashukuru. Na mbele ni hivyo tu, click ni hiyo, hakuna kulegeza, ni road to Paris. Hiyo tu ndo, hiyo inakuanga ombi ya kila athlete kuwakilisha katika Olimpiki. Sasa hiyo ni maombi yangu sana.
Now, despite windy conditions and dust, FIA Rally Star program driver Jeremiah Wahome won the Kenya National Rally Championship Round 6 of the Mombasa Motor Club held at the Mombasa Cement Vipingo in Kilifi County. Wahome, alongside his navigator Victor Okundi, clocked 2 hours, 12 minutes and 12 seconds through a total of 6 stages using their Ford Fiesta car. Only 5 teams managed to complete the 6 stages of the 2-day event, with Jasmeet Chana coming in second in a time of 2 hours hours, 13 minutes and 31 seconds, while Anthony Nelson settled for the third position. Speaking after the race, Wahome stated that teamwork enabled them register the good results despite many challenges they encountered during the event.
It was actually quite good. We started off quite well. Today's stages were quite tricky, long and bumpy. We had a few challenges along the way. Our intercom stopped working, so we couldn't hear each other, but good thing we had done the stage before, so we were able to find communication methods that worked. But fun in the end. We managed to come out with a victory. It's been very hot, but yeah, we're just glad to be here at the end of the day. We drove well, overcame the challenges, and just looking to build on the good performances.
Between, when it comes to the sport where it used to be, we're talking about holding events during the day and during the night. And Mombasa Motorsport, Motor Club have been able to try their best, ensure that they can be able to rekindle the memories of the Safari Rally, where we would start the rally at night and do it during the day. And this year, they have decided that they will do some of the events, being crab events and also the national event, which we are holding now. They say that they wanted to do two loops yesterday, two stages yesterday, and they want to see how it progresses from here as we continue to organize more and more events.
Now, Mary Mora has remained focused with her training regimen despite having a stellar season so far. Mora, who won gold in the women's 800-meter race at the recently concluded World Athletics Championships, has stated that her next big target is winning the finals of the Diamond League slated for 16th and 17th December this year in Oregon, USA. Mora, while speaking exclusively to TV47's sports desk during her training season at the Nyayo National Stadium, stated the importance of polishing her skills effectively since her opponents are also preparing in their respective countries.
Tulimaliza championship. I'm back to training, bado season inaendelea, sijafunga. Mazoezi ya saa hii na prepare kwenda final Diamond League. Ndio maana tumerudi kwa uwanja kidogo. Turekebishe mahali hatukuwa tumerekebisha mzuri. Sisi ni kawaida. Unajua mimi siwezi sema niko sawa. Coach ndiye anajua mahali mwili lazima arekebishe. Jio ni anata nini tuna target huko mbele. So lazima nirudi kwa mazoezi. Yeah. Final Diamond League tumekuwa tukishiriki hizi zingine. So yenye imepaki ni ya mwisho, lazima nijiprepare. Tunaenda US, Oregon. Sema niko na experience ya kwenda kukimbia huko juu, kila mtu ametrain na kila mtu ako shape. So ni wewe na akili yako na ucheze game yako, hivyo tu. Sasa niko na race 2, ndio maana anajitayarisha. Ya mwisho itakuwa Oregon tarehe 16, 17, then ndio nifunge season. Then tuanze maybe next season from January tukitarget Olympics. Sina hiyo. Yeah, kila mtu anaangalia mwili yake venye ina respond. Siwezi target mwili ya mtu. Yes.
Lakini how do you sum up the season?
Bado sijamaliza season.
Bado 2 tu.
Haitakuwa mbaya. Tumekuja progression imekuwa mzuri. Si mbaya, tulienda tukaachieve piki target yenye tulikuwa tumejitagetia kwa hii season. Bado hiyo moja ndio imepaki, ndio na target sasa.
And indeed, that sports story brings us to a close of the news spurt tonight on the Daily Report, the segment being Power and Politics. Mheshimiwa Ndindi Nyoro, as I had earlier mentioned, he's still right here in studio. Before we head to a break, I want to engage you once again, Mheshimiwa. On the 30th June 2022, you launched the plan as Kenya Kwanza. You have been in the progress. Earlier on, you stated that you've been in the kitchen. How far are you? What's the status of delivering this plan to Kenyans?
Thank you very much, George, again for hosting us this evening.
Yes.
The plan is very robust and wide and deep in its aspirations. And in the same breath, we have been able to capture most of the things that we actually launched.
Okay.
They are varied in terms of sectors, but holistically, the economy is doing much better than it ought to be doing if we are not implementing the plan. We have many facets of it. Number one, in terms of managing the macros of the economy.
Okay.
Making sure that our economy is back on its feet again, which I can confidently say that our economy is now solid and moving forward. In terms of the cost of living, I'm sure we'll be discussing all those matters. And in terms of shared prosperity, in terms of making sure that we distribute resources or public resources in a manner that every Kenyan is incorporated in the growth that I'm talking about.
Indeed, interesting perspectives, Mheshimiwa. We are due for a short break, but we'll discuss more on that, deliberations, or rather the scorecard he gave. Earlier on, he gave an 8.5%, or rather 8.5 out of 10. Do you agree with that rating? We've already seen your feedback.